in typical fashion, 5 seconds before I join the rest of the world for our morning safari, he goes to sleep. Welcome to Djuma, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful morning here in South Africa. My name is Mark. Brian is with me this morning. And of course Tara is back in final control. I'm glad you could join us this morning, and we're sitting with a leopard, as you can see, and he has come down out of his tree. He's had a kill here for the last couple of days, and I felt it important to come and to start here this morning because we've been following this drama as it unfolded when we first found him, and we've seen how sometimes a kill can last only a day or so, but I think to see it over a period of days is important too, because the larger the animal, obviously the longer it takes to eat it. There is some of the impala left in the tree. I'm not going to show it to you right now. We can't actually, because the trunk of the marula is in the way. We'll come around the side of the tree because it's our best view. A lot of the twigs that you're seeing, a lot of this brown dead stuff at the base of this marula tree is a plant from South America called blackjack. It is a little bit of a scourge. It is an aggressive invading alien species, and since he's mostly, and the hyena have mostly been trampling it over here, this is our best view, and unfortunately he's just turned over, but he is a bit restless. He's probably quite full, so he's probably not very comfortable, and so he's hopefully going to turn around and lie the other way or get up or something. But we're going to sit here for a little bit and observe him, and then continue on our drive and maybe come back intermittently throughout our drive. It's overcast. There's a little bit of light in the east where the cloud thins out, but there's quite a heavy bank coming up from the south, and it's going to keep things pretty grey for the first part of the morning. There's still a beautiful morning chorus of birds. There was a fish eagle calling earlier. We can hear the red-billed buffalo weavers now, mostly chittering in the distance. Tweeting. They're all tweeting #SafariLive. Barely a breath of wind, which means that the temperatures are very mild, varying slightly from the lower lying areas in the riverbeds and drainage lines to the top of the hills. We're sort of halfway to the top of a ridge. There is a herd of wildebeest fairly close by. We saw them on our way here, and I thought, failing to find him, we would join them. They were slowly making their way towards Djuma Waterhole Gowrie Dam, which is due east of us. I'm wondering if he might hear them. I don't think it would do anything, but he'd certainly sit up and look. A little unusual that the hyenas have given up already. The hyenas normally hang around for quite a while. There is, whatever there is that's left is good enough for a hyena. And coming past here last night, I didn't see any hyena either. We're not sure what might have been exciting, since he's only fed more and filled up more, and now he's got to conserve all of that, or digest it and conserve all the energy that it gives him. A couple of other birds that I can hear. There's a rolling call of an arrow-marked babbler. That one. Choo, 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 choo. And flying overhead we can hear the chee of the oxpeckers. Choo, that's a glossy starling. The first person to send in a question this morning, or question that has come in all the way from Arizona. Good morning to Deborah in Arizona, wanting to know if lion, hyena, leopard, any of the large predators, he's watching something, it could be the wildebeest, wanting to know if they suffer from bloat. Bloat as far as I'm aware, and now I might be wrong, and I need to learn as much as anybody, but from what I understand, when cattle eat too much of a very, very lush green grass that ferments too quickly and it causes too much gas, and it can, well, bloat can be relieved in rather a harsh manner out in the field, much the same way as a tracheotomy. Yeah, one of those things to open a tracheotomy, that thing. Can't get my mouth around it. But I've never known of bloat in carnivores, and I'm open to information on that, and I often do get feedback from viewers when they ask me questions that I don't know, and I often get information back. I have to thank you very much for that, especially Sharon up in Austria, who's constantly providing me with wonderful tidbits of information. Stuff that I probably ordinarily wouldn't come across on my own, but because it comes up in conversation with all of you around the world, it's a great learning experience for me to be out here, to be showing you our African wildlife and telling you as much as I can about it, and in the same process learning so much more. questions@wildearth.tv is the email address. And as I mentioned earlier, #Safari Live. "100% live, real Africa, this very moment." I'm trying to keep my voice fairly low. I don't want to disturb him too much. Hope you can all hear me well enough. Julie and Susie both sending in tweets of bloat-in horses and bloat-in goats. Once again, both herbivores. I've heard of it in horses too, from my horse friends. And I'm wondering if it's the same cause, just eating too much of a good thing. And the digestive tract getting blocked and gases building up and escaping into the peritoneal cavity, I guess. I guess, but I might be wrong. Something to look at. I guess we could take a vote if we should sit here for a little while longer, or if we should go for a drive, because I think he's going to be sleeping a little bit. And since there's no sunshine coming, we can do a loop and see what else we can see. I'm keen to find flowers, and I think by today already, after 2 days almost, I think that there might be something to see. Certainly these monkey pods that are around us at the moment, their flowers have perked up. Everything's looking a little bit brighter. It was starting to look very drab and dry. Damp conditions again, and perhaps the chances of the last of the flowering plants before the dry season. There's supposed to be some things, especially a flower called the Chrysandra. Catherine in Dallas. Oh, nice to hear from you, Catherine. Welcome to our drive. How can you tell the difference gender-wise in the footprints of cats? Most animals, Catherine, as an adult, they pretty much have a uniform foot size that you could almost put a measuring tape to. And as adults, male cats tend to be heavier and bigger than females, and because they're somewhat bigger and heavier, they have bigger feet to carry them, and that makes a bigger print on the ground. And of course it can be difficult when you've got Karula and her 2 boys. I'm sure when they were only about a year old, about a year ago, when they were probably around her size, their prints must have been very, very similar in size. Although I'd imagine by 6 months they're already getting close to the size of their mothers. Sounds like a robin alarming to my left. Morning, Raisa. In Finland, what is the green plant we can currently see? That one there next to him, directly behind. It looks like a guarri bush, Raisa. Pretty long leaves, but it looks like a guarri. I'm sitting a little bit forward to the camera, so I can't see properly. I'm going to cut the trunk of the tree in the way. But yeah, it's the same as the leaves that I can see coming out the other side. And they are a little bit wavy. It's a worry. We can move position. Maybe it's a baby jackalberry. You can see the whole plant. There it is, a little guarri bush. A little bit too much blackjack around the front of him, but also we can't sit here too long because we are blocking his, yeah, like he cares.
His view of his island.
Yeah, I can smell him. It's almost like a wet dog smell. What are we blocking? I was saying that we were kind of blocking his view, but there's also right next to me is a flat zebra wood that he can't see anything anyway. So, but and then he flopped his head down, and well, he doesn't want to see anything anyway. But I think what we're going to do is we'll come back. Let's go and have a look, see what these wildebeest are up to. Catch up on the size of the youngsters, because we actually witnessed and filmed, we had live the birth of wildebeest back in November, and two of these two youngsters might very well be two from then. So we'll leave him be, sleeping away, sleeping off an entire impala. All that is left, I don't think I'll show you, it's a bit gruesome, and I know some people don't like it, so there's maybe later if we need to, but all there really is skin and the leg bones. Zebra wood. Called a zebra wood, by the way, because it has beautiful different colored wood. The outer wood is yellow, very, very pale, and the heart wood is very, very dark. It's almost a dark purple. It's so cool. It's almost black, but it's so dark. And in places it is pretty black. And a lot of the original wood carvings that you might get from Africa, that you might see in flea markets or curio shops, a lot of those carvings, especially the Maasai carvings, and a lot of carvings that come out of East Africa that are from a tribe known as the Makonde. And the Makonde carvings are extremely well carved, beautifully polished bits of zebra wood, which is called ebony. It is called ironwood sometimes, but a lot of it is sold as ebony. I think the what are they called? The recorder. There's some wind instruments that are made out of zebra wood that are called, also it's called ebony, although they don't really belong to the ebony family, botanically speaking. And if you get a piece and you manage to carve it, oh, I had my eyes on the damn little fluffy roller, all puffed up and everywhere to go. Roller for Linda.
How long will these rollers be around for?
Their lifetime. They don't move.
In this area?
They, no, they don't migrate, so they stay here all year round.
Okay.
They're probably relieved now. Where'd he go? He might have gone after an insect. But he just flew to another marula tree. These are the lilac-breasted rollers. They're residents here. Good question, Brian. Because we've just had another roller leave us. And for most of the summer, they only come in very, very late in November or early December. And there's a Eurasian roller come from Europe, Asia, hence Eurasia. The Eurasian rollers are mostly blue. They don't have all the other colors. They're mostly a light turquoise. They're a much heavier bird, and because they're not here to breed, they breed up there. They don't breed here, as far as I know. Oh, there is never mind, it's flown. I thought it might have been a turaka, but it was a rainbird, a birch cuckoo, and unfortunately it flew away. But the Eurasian, what was I saying? They don't breed, so they don't nest, but they still have to talk on the radio. Our station is leaving lock of Ingwe on that Marlanyama open lock. Cedric, come in. I'm sure they should get that. The European rollers tend to dominate our lilac-breasted rollers in the summer months. They compete for the same food. They have pretty much the same method of hunting. They'll sit on a branch and they will catch insects that they see. Insects, anything that moves, lizards, chameleons, small snakes. They're quite good hunters. Their beak is shaped very similar to that of a shrike. I'm sure a lot of you know what a shrike's beak looks like. Very straight but a very sharp curved head. D-curved we call it. And they are able to tear things apart with that, even frogs. We had a flash of signal issue there for some reason. I'm wondering if it wasn't perhaps the game drive radio that kicked in again. So I switched off the radio, the vehicle, when I opened the radio. Next time we'll have to do the same, just to prevent that from happening, just in case it is that. one thing I really do have to show you. I think we'll go there now. Keep it as a surprise, because it's a rather unusual thing to find. So that's it, by the way, just by the by. Another bird that we've lost until next summer because they've gone back north is the Wahlberg's eagle, and that is a Wahlberg's eagle nest that has been used over many years, if not decades. It's a very rough nest, but that's quite typical of eagles' nests. Aries. I'm an Aries, but it's a different type of an Aries. Aries plural. Iris, E-Y-R-I-E-S, Iris, Aries, eagle's nests. And the Wahlbergs that was living here, the very pale Wahlbergs. And I have to be honest, all the summer that we were here, I didn't see it with a mate, as far as I remember. We always saw it on its own, and for a long time, when I first got here, I thought maybe because the mate was on the nest, but they do tend to nest very early in the season. They come back from further north in Africa, and they tend to nest fairly early, shortly after they get back, in about September. They're one of the first migrants to come back, along with the yellow-billed kites, the Milvus migrans. Oh, there's something for Teresa. Monkey oranges at last. They start, but we're going to have to wait until they get a little bit fuller, or until maybe we can find one. Sorry, Brian. And since I'm seeing a lot of small ones around, we might get some closer to the camera. Call them monkey orange, but by no means anything close to the citrus orange. Either known as the green monkey orange or the black monkey orange. And I think it's Strychnos madagascariensis. Check that in the book. Crested barbet calling. So far, a lot of the sounds are very passive sounds. A lot of them are just sounds of birds behaving normally, and that tells us that there aren't too many predators about. We can hear things for quite some distance, especially the alarm calls. And tree to tree, that I think is the white-browed scrub robin. The flower starting to come out. This plant. So this is it's like a succulent, and its flower heads are going to be starting to burst soon. You can only see the buds at the moment, but that's a crassula. Those will be, I can't see them yet, but we'll keep our eye open for some that might be flowering. There'll be yellow flower heads. We also get orange ones. Sorry. I've got to wait for that cameraman to finish his thing. I guess I'm just I want to find things. more patience perhaps. More patience with the panning. Interesting question from Anne, wanting to know whether a leopard would climb up that eagle's nest and eat the chicks or the eggs. I think yes, possibly. I'm trying to think whether I've ever experienced that. There's something small to show you in the road. You can see little conical shapes in the sand. A little bit different color to the surrounding ground. And those are ants cleaning, doing a lot of housekeeping. Those are now ant hills, and they don't really get much bigger because ants can't stick the grains of sand together the way termites can. So when we see something that's big, and a lot of people call them ant hills, they're not really ant hills, they're termite mounds. These are ant hills, and they can only get to be about 2 or 3 inches high, about 5 to 8 centimeters, and quite often they're built right over the mouth of the nest, especially in weather like this. First of all, it retains a lot of moisture and well, just the humidity and temperature levels, but also when it rains again, the rain will form a cap over the entrance to the nest, and often just before rain you can see the ants starting to do that. And I'm going to play slalom, anthill slalom, try and avoid them all. I think the leopard would, especially cubs, especially leopard cubs, climb a nest, climb a tree. Ah, that's interesting. Some of the viewers have seen old leopards going up. Also true. Old leopards that are getting a little bit slow, taking the easy way out. That makes sense. Thanks to those who mentioned that, sending in tweets. I can't think if I've ever seen, I mean, I've seen so many leopard in my life and spent so much time with them, but I can't think of having seen that. But then again, you see, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It's like when we saw Tingana, that first time we saw Tingana with an aardvark kill, it was the first time I'd ever seen a leopard with an aardvark kill. Morning doves, excuse me, coming through. 3 doves on the road. We're gonna just walk up the hill. You got wings? Yeah, thank you. Don't even need Red Bull. Mike in Richards Bay, thanks for the question. Good to hear from you too. I've spent time in Richards Bay. I'll get back to that later if you want. Mike was asking Lion, you get the white lion as a color variation or as a recessive gene. Yeah, and in cheetah you get the king cheetah, which is also a recessive gene, which is the opposite to the white lion. White lion or white tiger is a condition called, well, let's call it a condition, but it's called leucism or leucistic, L-E-U-C-I-S-T-I-C, leucistic individuals, as opposed to melanistic individuals. Mike is asking whether leopards show any color variations, or in this area perhaps, or in particular zebra tracks going that way. Whether there are any leopards that are carrying the gene for any color variation. Well, I do know of black leopards, which are melanistic leopards. I haven't ever heard of a leucistic leopard, unless then the snow leopard can't be considered leucistic. It's just snow leopard. And of course, a very, very rare leopard that Will Fox told me about, and that Tara is studying. Tara is one of our presenters. She's doing her PhD and her thesis on leopards in the Tabatola district of Lydenburg. They have a leopard in their books, a leopard that they get on because they've got a lot of cameras set up to monitor the leopards. And there's a leopard they call a strawberry leopard. It's a gorgeous reddish color. But here in the Sabi Sand, there were, when I first got to the Sabi Sand in the 90s, there were rumors, I guess you could say, myths, legends, rumors of black leopard up here in the north. I personally haven't seen any, never seen a black leopard other than on film, and I don't know anybody who has, but there are reportedly black leopards around the Tabatola district where Tara is doing her study too, and that is Leopard Research Group, the Leopard Research Camp. Ingwe Leopard Research it's called. Got to look that up. Ingwe Leopard Research. Going very slowly because we're approaching the hyena den. Can't drive past this area without popping in to have a look. I'm wondering if anyone is here. So far, no. No sign of a soul. Howdy, Yamanini. Anybody home? Like they're gonna come out and say, yes, Mark, we're here. But not today, Josephine. Maybe it's a little bit cool and cold and they're being a little bit wet and damp and they're just all curled up, snug as hyenas in a den. Any station copy me? Very strange the way the radio is behaving. It's got to try and get any of you stations copy me, Mark here, WildEarth. Morning. As far as I know, only update here is quarantine mail with that Djuma just next to Yuri's house. I left it in open lock a little while ago. You're welcome. Okay, copy. Let me know if you find any in Gloven console, please. Lewis, buffalo. New York buffalo, I guess. Buffalo, New York. Bulls territory. One thing to know if the hyena might have been forced out of their den by the recent heavy rains. Possibly. Possibly. They do sometimes. Of course, what also happens is sometimes the termite mountain or the den can get saturated, parts of it can cave in. But sometimes they might vacate. So it looks like the zebra went that way. Let's go and have a look. They might have gone down Rebecca's road. And so I'll go down Rebecca's road. My guess is they might have even cut all the way across to Zoe's road. So just once again I want to welcome you all for your Saturday night or Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning. This wonderful weekend we have. We have a wet weekend. I'm hoping that spring is coming to a lot of you in the northern hemisphere. You've had a pretty cold winter, I believe. With it bringing a lot of the spring blossom, maybe for you. Had a few people sending me pictures of spring flowers. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Zebra tracks on the road, heading up. Morning, Gail. Gail's in Calgary. At what age do leopard siblings not get along? Do they start? I think it's pretty much from about just after a year. And they'll still spend time with mom and they'll still spend time together and they'll still play together for a while, for another year. Oh, look at him. We've seen him before. Oh, and off he goes. Stop, Mr. Warthog, please. Please stop and say hello. He just turned tail and maybe because I said, oh look, and then of course he got a fright.
Stage fright.
Stage fright. But keep the camera there, there's a millipede just there on this piece of bush willow. Millipede. What we call in Shangaan, it's called Kongoloti. And in Zulu it's known as Shongololo. In fact, South Africans, we grow up knowing it as a Shongololo. Leopard siblings start getting a little bit aggressive with each other when they start dominating on the kill that mom catches for them, or when they kill something themselves. And leopards start a lot earlier than the other cats, the big cats, to do their own hunting. In fact, very often when mom leaves them, even at a few months old, and they're left to do their own thing, you'll find that leopard are likely to chase something, anything that moves. But I think it's by about 2 years that they start, around about their second birthday, when they start losing tolerance, and they might still be around and they might even be together, but you'll find that their personal space will be greater and there'll be a lot of snarling at each other for a while. I wonder what this millipede is, if it's eating, or could be resin that it's eating from the broken branches. Anyways, let's move along. bird call we're hearing. That could be a white-browed scrub robin. I'm trying to get my head around the call. It's not the typical scrub robin, but they do have very cool. They're songsters. Well, most of the robins are songsters. By no means the songster like the towel robin, which mimics a lot of other birds. But this little, oh wait, it could be the bearded scrub robin. Not the white-browed scrub robin. Maybe. See if anyone can find the bird calls. I should have that app on my device. But when I'm reminded all the time. Sometimes I don't hear something for a while. It makes it difficult to access that old information in the brain. Let's see if I can try and find, we're still on these zebra tracks by the way. I'll try and find a good enough track to show you. Looks like might have been trotting here, so they're a little bit deep, but I want to show you a part of the track known as the frog, which for those of you in the horse industry are aware of. It's a little triangle in the middle of the hoof. Unfortunately, there's a nice one up ahead. Much smaller than a horse's track for an adult zebra, and this just might be a lone stallion that's been running up this way. Actually, here it's slowed down. Here it's just a walk. You see the foot placement is it's putting its one foot where its other foot was. Unless it's just one of the zebra was walking in the road at this point. No, there's another track here too. So it isn't just the one. Others might have been walking off of the road. Zebra are going to be moving around quite a bit now, going to a lot of the open areas that they find are in their movement, and they're going to be looking for some of the new grasses that are coming through. As early as even yesterday, there were probably new grasses, new flushes of green. Sabria. I hope I pronounce it correctly. One of our zoomies asking me if I've ever tracked animals for research purposes or been out in the field, veterinary work, assisted. I have indeed. Sabria. My first experience was back in the 80s. It was actually a very interesting experience because at the time I was in the southern part of the Sabi Sands, and at the time the Sabi Sand was a self-contained reserve. It was adjacent to Kruger and separated only by a very meager fence, but the western boundary of the Sabi Sand was pretty much as it is now. But the Sabi Sand was managed as a separate entity to Kruger because it was a privately owned game reserve as opposed to the government-owned side of the Kruger National Park, and being managed in a different way because it was smaller, and at the time the rhino population was pretty stable here. However, there was only a certain number of rhino that the Sabi Sand could hold because of its size, and it was decided to perhaps sell off rhino, and what they did is they made a deal with the game reserve up in the north at well, my brain's thinking about something I'm looking at while I'm talking to you. Anyways, so the very first rhino, white rhino that was captured here in the Sabi Sand after very intensive breeding program or very protective breeding programs that started in the early 60s, because there were no white rhino here in the sands. They'd been wiped out prior to the 60s, and the first rhino were brought in the 1960s, and they had bred so well and so many had been brought in that the population it was time to sell off. And I was part of, as guides for the lodge, what is now Lion Sands. At the time it was Sabi, but we were involved in the capture program to capture the first white rhino to be sold out of the Sabi Sands ever, and it was testament to the protection that rhino had in those years, and for maybe the next decade and a half, or even the next 2 decades, still managed to have that amount of protection. But it was a very interesting exercise, darting the rhino, being there when he was darted, being there because they had to take blood for blood tests, and I don't think even DNA was a thing in the 80s yet, so it was mostly blood, checking the rhino for parasites, checking it for all sorts of things. And then what was most interesting is at the time you couldn't load a sleeping rhino, because essentially the drug that was used is pretty much a nervous system suppressant, and so he was pretty much immobile. And even though there were a lot of us, I have to tell you, trying to move a sleeping rhino was one thing, but to get him into the crate we had to wake him up, and that was another matter entirely. And I think there must have been 20 of us with the staff, with the capture group, the wildlife capture group that were there, trying to get this huge animal. It was a big rhino bull into this crate. Was a mission on its own, but very interesting. First time ever, and the only time ever I've had my hands on a rhino. I was involved at the same time, sadly, with a veterinary intervention. We've had a wild dog that had a snare around its neck, and at the time, and I think still to some degree today, people were coming in from the rural areas in the west of the Sabi Sand, setting snares for maybe guinea fowl, maybe duiker and steenbok, small mammals. But of course snares are indiscriminate, and the wild dog pack, well, one of the dogs in a pack that we had there, managed to get the snare caught and managed to break free. And unfortunately, when you get these larger mammals that are able to break the wire breaks when it's very, very tight, and it had been cutting into his neck. But the vet came out, we monitored him. I remember another guide, Paul, and I monitored the pack for hours. We sat there in the heat, and we were lucky that it was a pretty hot day, but we sat there for quite some time monitoring this dog, and until the vet got there, came in from, I think his name was Roy Benjies at the time, Doc Benjies. He came in and he darted the dog, and we cut, when I say we were bystanders. But still, I can remember carrying this dog and being so amazed at how light it was. Paul and I were carrying him on a tarp, because we had to, when he fell asleep, had to put him in the shade to keep his body temperature down. And very successful operation. The wire was cut off, his neck was sewed up, antibiotics were administered, and they went so far as leaving an impala carcass for the rest of the pack to stay close by, because it took some time for him to wake up, and he rejoined the pack. And as a pack, just after that, I think it was within minutes of them running off, they actually killed another impala, and they made sure he was eating. It was fantastic. Other incidents, I had to dart a baby sable once in a reserve I was managing. It was a heartbreaking experience. We had a small herd of sable, and the sable had a broken leg, and it was necessary to dart. I had to call the vet out a few times, because there were times when I'd find the sable, but I'd have to get out of the reserve to go and make the call. There were no cell phones in those days. And the baby was this calf was taken to Onderstepoort. Onderstepoort here in South Africa is probably the primary veterinary training institution. I suppose it's kind of like the equivalent of UC Davis's in California, UC Davis Veterinary Department, in that it's a very big research and very active animal hospital, especially dealing with wildlife and large mammals. They have the facilities for that. But unfortunately, I did get a report, an autopsy report, but it didn't help me very much. But it died several days after they had tried to sort it out. It would have been a lovely success story. Since then, I've been involved with lion research up in the Sulu Game Reserve in southeastern Tanzania. When I was there in the late 90s, there was a chap doing his PhD thesis on lion. He came from Uppsala University in Sweden. His name was Goran Spong, and he sent me his thesis. I've got his paper. It was great to get that. But it was great to be with them, darting the lions and collaring them, or sometimes taking the collars off. There's a lot of debate whether one should go through that process of taking the collars off, and that's all about the stress that animals go through when they are darted, because they are given a tranquilizer that allows them to still see and hear, and they can still process a lot of what's going on around them, but they can't do anything. So I think it must be extremely traumatic for an animal to be locked inside its own body with these humans doing things. And it's one thing to be able to fix an animal and release it and have the pleasure of it rejoining its pride, or because we've done it with lion, we've done it with leopard, just rejoining the ecosystem, being part of the place where it belongs, despite the bad encounter with the bad side of humans in the form of snares. For research purposes, I do understand it, though. What we know about their movement now has come about because of satellite tracking and radio telemetry, putting radio tracking collars on things, and it's helping us a lot. Of course, nowadays there is a more passive means to do these things, and we've got the lovely invention of the trail camera, motion sensors on them, and it's one of the things that they do for a lot of the leopards in the Tabatolo district. Some of them do have collars on because it's important to get data on exactly where they go and their movements, but also because there's so many leopards, you can't put collars on every one of them. But at least with a lot of cameras around, you can pick up leopards in different areas, or any animal for that matter, and be able to identify them. I stopped here originally because I can see a snake skin, and I want to go and have a look at it. So if you'll excuse me for a sec, follow me as I head out that way. and tell. I'll come back to that. It's another little interesting tidbit. This is so fresh, the snake skin. There's still the sheen. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the snake was somewhere there watching me do this. That's the top of the head. That was on a separate spine. The tree that it was on, funny enough, is a zebra wood. We're talking about zebra wood. Zebra woods are very spiny. Spines, by the way, are modified branches as opposed to thorns, which are modified leaves. This is so fresh, it's soft and moist, and it's not moist because of the humidity, it's moist because that snake did this during the night. And unfortunately this part of the head has torn off. This is the top scales on top of the head, and I could probably go through my book and find out what snake it is. And I'm guessing it could even be a brown house snake. There's the bottom jaw. And it's beautiful because that's also going to show me the configuration of the scales. And I could also count the scales in cross section across the body diagonally. If you count the row of scales from, there's the bottom scale that comes over the back in a diagonal pattern. The whole skin from the tip of the head to the tip of the tail. Oops. It's light, it's feathery. It's a very smooth scaled snake. This is why I'm thinking it could be something like a brown house snake. It's not one of the tree snakes, it's a little bit too fat. The tree snakes like the vine snake and the worm slung are much thinner. The other little toy I wanted to show you, I call them toys because they're my toys. Nature's wonderful little tidbits. It tells us about all sorts of things that we might not see, but telltale signs that they were here. This is a very particular type of praying mantis egg case. It's like a little air bubble. It's hard to explain it to you, but the line that we see at the top, that's the exit holes, and deep inside this little air bubble are all the little egg chambers, maybe only about a dozen or 2 dozen egg chambers encased in this little air bubble of, instead of foam, some of the bigger mantis egg cases are just foam around the egg chambers, but this is like a little air bubble, the same substance that dries, and that of course keeps them nicely insulated against things on the outside, protects them from predation. Don't stop now. Let me move back just an inch. One of our viewers asked me to find the green woodupoo or the red-billed woodupoo. They now known as the green woodupoo, and they're going to fly in a flock with that lovely cackling sound. Oh, they're going far too far away. That cackling sound, they do a dance with their tails. We'll just have to try and find another group of them, I hope. Any animals or birds that use the snake skin? And if so, how? I'm trying to think. This Tammy was asking this. Thanks, Tammy. Just trying to think what birds might use it. Birds used it, they would use it for nesting, if they did. I'm trying to think of birds that might, Tammy. What was here? Something big. It was probably that zebra rolling, I think so. I've known some large snakeskin that's left on the tree. I've known spiders to use sack spiders, bark spiders, no, not bark spiders, crab spiders. I've known some spiders to live in a larger snakeskin when it forms like a little, they can wrap it and form it into a little nest. I wouldn't be surprised. I found when I got home, there's another one. When I got home, this time on leave, when I was on leave now, just a couple of weeks ago, I had snakeskin on the floor of my kitchen and snakeskin on the top of the cabinet in the kitchen. Now, I don't think it was a snake that left it there. I think it was the squirrels that were stealing snakeskin, because I've got snakeskin all over my house. And there was a big mamba skin that I found many years ago. In fact, this one might end up there. When I was here, I found a mamba skin that was over 8 feet long. Excuse me a moment, I just have to talk on the radio. Mark, you go ahead. Okay, it's closer to the Vuya side of Yuri's Kaya. If you head up the road that from the dam towards Yuri's Kaya, not the one at Inga's Kaya, or otherwise if you go up from Inga's Kaya, just follow the fence line towards Vuya's. But you'll probably find the movers tracks coming in from that road that goes between Yuri's Kaya and Vuya Teva. Very, very close to that road that runs between the two, but also almost right on the fence line. Look at Impala Plains. I want to have a look. There's a lovely vista of the Drakensberg Mountains looking out to the west. A little bit of dark cloud to the southwest that's moving north, and there's a little bit of a bank coming in from the south too. But we might still be able to see the mountains. After the rain that settles the dust, we should get lovely views out to the mountains. Think of anything else. Anyways, the squirrel must have stolen some of my snakeskin and used it for nesting material. So I guess that we could say maybe squirrels use it for nesting. Virginia's asking a question, how many different types of something? It's can't quite.
Mantis?
Oh, mantises. Thanks, Brian. My other ear. Hello, Virginia. Lovely to hear from you. Different types of mantises. Well, gosh, there's so many. They have managed to. Oh, there's a bark spider still on its web. Mantises seem to have been able to occupy almost every possible surface. So there are ground mantises that live on the ground that are very cryptically colored, that are fairly flat on the sand. There are grass mantids that are thin. They almost look like twig insects, stick insects. They're very, very thin and beige, the same color, and it's almost as thin as their limbs, their body, even their front legs that they use for catching. Very short and very, very thin, living on blades of grass. There are flat, very dark colored, cryptically colored mantises that live on the barks of different trees. There are very ornate, colorful mantids that live on flowers. There are the green mantids that live amongst the green leaves that are also very varied in their size and their green coloration and their shape. I hope you're going to join us this afternoon, Virginia. I have one or two in my dead insect collection. And that sounds gross, but insects die and their skeletons are outside skeletons, exoskeletons. So when they die, there's still the same insect to see. And I do have a few of those that I keep for like a show and tell moment. Looks like the spider is suspended in midair. This is one of the large nocturnal, the largest actually nocturnal spider. We are not seeing any golden orbs anymore. I don't think that any of those that might have been rained out might not have had the strength or the protein reserves to rebuild webs. In fact, it's going to be a hard thing to find golden orb now. Maybe I'll be looking at now that I've mentioned it to you. But the bark spiders, they last a little longer, and they even in the dry season they're out at night, and quite typically they break their web down in the morning. They're not like the golden orbs that maintain a web throughout the season. And there have been a lot of termites flying. I noticed there was a picture of swarms of termites at the light at Arathusa. I'm sure the same was happening here at Ari Dam. That was the big macrotermes, the big pinnacle mount termites that must have been releasing their termites after the rain a few nights ago. And it would be these bark spiders that would be catching lots of them. Excuse me a moment. Okay, go ahead, Ephraim. Ephraim again. Ephraim, copying you 1 out of 5, and then maybe somebody can relay for me. Not many people driving around Djuma today, but just a beautiful morning. The air is so still, such great temperature. Shall we continue? I wish I could get a closer picture to that bark spider. We're seeing it underneath. They're very, very black underneath, the bark spiders. They're not venomous to us, but they do have a venom that subdues their prey, even though they have a very strong silk. But it's their back, the bark spiders, the back of bark spiders, quite interesting, very camouflaged, because they sit on the bark when they're not out on the web. This, nobody told this one though. This one was in the back of the queue when they were handing out the rules. Alison, thanks for the question. Alison is asking about the termites, flying termites. Why do they only fly after thunderstorms? Well, it seems to be that the thunderstorm is the trigger, and the flying termites, Alison in Canada, I think, flying, got the wildebeest rolling in the sand. The flying termites that we see after thunderstorms are the reproductive caste. The winged termites are turn that down. Oh, sorry, other radio interrupting me. Termite colonies consist of mostly soldiers and worker castes, with the one queen, and she pretty much dictates what goes on in the termite mound by producing pheromones that incite the workers or the soldiers to behave in a particular way. The soldiers, of course, also act instinctively, and they gather where there is a breach in the termite mound to attack anything that might be attacking them. And there are a number of ant species that specialize in termites and will fight jaws and jaws to steal termites to take home, to chop up, to feed their larvae or to feed on themselves. One doesn't get to see the winged termites until it's time for them to be released by the colony, and those are the ones that have the reproductive system. All other termites that live in the colony don't have a reproductive system. They merely have a digestive system to be able to break down, using a bacteria, break down plant material, whether it's dead grasses or dead leaves, mostly dead wood. But there are some termites that I would expect to see here on this grassland area called harvester termites that only feed on grasses. And every now and then, every season, they need to breed, and the species needs to procreate, and so they release reproductives. Now those reproductives, the winged termites, have to find another place to burrow down into the ground to be able to start a new colony, and that can generally only happen after a very substantial rainfall. And it is usually a thunderstorm that brings a very substantial rainfall, and it's almost the vibration, the electricity. I would imagine it's the vibration of the thunder. It's that is a signal to all the termite colonies in an area of the same species to release their reproductives, which is why over a given area you will find them coming out of termite mounds miles apart and just clouding the skies. They are eaten by everything. They are very, very high in protein, and they're very, very tasty for everything, for many, many different things, from lizards to snakes to insects and spiders and birds and bats, cats, owls, eagles. Oh gosh, every conceivable predator will be eating termites when they are erupting. And because there's so many things eating them, they need to be produced in such large numbers to ensure that there are going to be a number that will survive, because by the end of the evening everything is just so sick of eating termites that they don't eat many of them anymore. The winged individuals land after flight. Very important sound that, by the way. Can't see anything, but we're going to turn around and have a look that way when I'm telling. We'll keep an ear open. Those are francolins that were being startled by something, so there could be something walking around here, like a cat or something. We need to also go back to see the leopard soon, and I can't see the mountains. But those winged reproductives, when they land after a short flight, actually lose their wings. It's quite interesting to see, because they sort of shake their body and their wings fall off, because they don't need them anymore. They're going to be burrowing underground. The female, the queen, gives off a pheromone, and it attracts males who will follow her, and she somehow gets this. It's built into her being to know where it is that she needs to start digging, and the two of them dig down into the ground, and of course they hopefully start a new colony if they can make it. What are you eating, starling? Starling just landed. The Birchall starling could be eating ants or termites. Can't quite. Thanks to some of the viewers saying that there's wildebeest, probably the same herd that I was looking for earlier at Djuma waterhole at Gowrie Dam. We might make our way around there because we want to go back and see what the leopard is up to. But not much of a view of the mountains, fairly low cloud. Turn around if I can see if there's anything coming out onto the road after frightening these francolins. Hi starlings, darlings, darlings. This is Impala Plains. Oh. Okay, I'm not coming. Crowned lapwing plover shouting at me because I'm turning around. Probably getting close to its nest. They're probably going to be nesting soon. Crowned plovers tend to nest in the dry season. I've seen them sitting in the open areas in the winter months. Crowned plover. Are you one of the francolin that were shouting? Two of them. Yeah, you look guilty. Three of you. Flew out of somewhere in here, alarming. And now they're not really complaining much, but they're sitting. I want to sit in the open because clearly there's something moving in the grasses that they want to be able to see where it's coming from, so they can't be too much of a threat. If it's too much of a threat, they would be sitting in a tree, and if it was a leopard, they would be sitting in a tree and chirping. But maybe it was a snake or a smaller cat. Drizzle. Yeah, starting to mist up my glasses. Very fine drizzle. Who does this remind you of? Oh no! Let me put it up this way because it's...
Yeah, that's it. That's spot on.
Okay, I'll let you all think about that for a little bit because I've got a question coming through. Somebody wants to know something, or somebody wants to... I want to know something. Brianna, I think. Brianna. Did you hear Brianna? Rihanna. Deanna. Oh, Deanna. Could it be? I know there is a Deanna. Michigan. Oh, I think I'm getting a bit hungry. Deanna in Michigan wants to know how long does it take? Deanna. Termite mounds. How long does it take to grow? I think it's about 10 years before it's the size of a football. Some of these termite colonies, these big mounds, are hundreds of years old. But I don't know how long the queen lasts, and I don't know how the succession of queens, I don't know how that takes place. because I'm quite sure the queen doesn't last for a long time. She's producing thousands of eggs daily. She has a swollen body that is probably 100 times her normal body size, so she can't move. Her abdomen becomes so swollen. She has a normal sized, or maybe slightly larger, head and thorax, but her abdomen becomes huge. To produce thousands of eggs. Some time ago, a few days ago, not long ago, a few days ago, somebody asked me about nuts. Okay. Good morning, Ramay. Morning, Ramay. Ramay's tweet came through first with marula nut. Yes, Ramay, marula nut. We were talking about nuts earlier, because quite often the question, well, that was the question a little while ago. Since we often talk about fruits, we never mention nuts, and I guess you can't eat muesli with fruit and not have nuts, or that lovely chocolate. Good is fruit chocolate without nuts in it. Yes, that's a nut. But then it got into a discussion, what actually constitutes a nut? Because I'll show you something else. Oh, I've lost it. I'm lucky I haven't stood on it. Not a nut. Nut, not a nut. Finger pointing at me, nut. Finger pointing at the thumb, not a nut. Not a snake skin. It's a thinner, smaller snake. Sorry, yeah, you see, it's just lovely things to just get distracted with on a day like today. Also looks like a pretty fresh snake skin. And this time in a buffalo thorn. Also, head to tail, probably very fresh. Just missed the reptile, perhaps, sadly. Marula is probably the only nut that we have that is not only palatable, but it's, or rather not only edible, it's just highly palatable. It's such a delicious nut. This is a marula nut that I'm imagining grew into a tree rather than, or it germinated rather than was eaten into, because these, I must find you now another marula nut, if the squirrels have left me any. But these little eyes that you can see have a cap in them. It's almost like cork. Or it's a little woody cap that you can barely see when it's complete, when the actual nuts themselves are encased in these holes. Sometimes there's a third one. I've got one that's actually got 4 chambers, but it had 4 nuts. So this is actually the outer casing of the nut. Maybe call it, what do you call it? A stone?
Shell.
Shell? Well, I mean, peanuts have shells. Or other nuts. This is sort of hard and woody, so it's more like a stone. So would you call a peach pip a nut? Or you call it a pip or a stone? See, terminology, debatable how to call these things. That is a seed. See, now that is a seed. It's not really a nut. The seed is actually inside there. That's known as Diceracarium. Devil's thorn. I see some impala. I saw their tails flashing. A couple of impala rams. Not alarm tails, just casual flick of the tail to say everything's fine. Now that we're coming, he's not flicking his tail, so that means that he's looking at something, which is us. Morning, Mr. Impala. Getting very, very healthy, strong, robust, probably bulking up with all the green that might come through in the next few days. Hello boys. So how's the rut working out for you at the moment? Not all the rams can get a chance. Well, some of them eventually do, but not all of them at the same time can have a harem of females and carve out their little niche and be eligible for mating. But throughout the rut, they eventually do get their chance, because the ram that has the females has a job on his hands. No, his horns, really. He's got to keep his females in a very tight-knit group. As soon as one of them starts straying, he's likely to lose her to another ram. And maybe it's moving off into thicker bush. And these two boys are still quite amicable. But he's also got to fight off other rams that are dying to get their share of the mating rights. And while now these rams are bulking up and they're getting really, really healthy, they're probably doing a little bit of sparring on the side to keep their tactics and their sparring ability up to scratch. And every now and then, when they try their luck with the adult ram that has established a harem, he ends up chasing them off, and he uses up a lot of energy. In fact, most of his time is spent chasing females back into the herd, chasing big males and fighting with them, or chasing young rams who want to come back to mommy because it's the first time they've had to leave the natal group and they want to go back to the herd. And they don't quite get it that they are now got to be part of the bachelor herd and fit in with that hierarchy. So an impala will lose condition fairly quickly during the rutting season, and it doesn't take long for one of these boys who's now been feeding and fighting or sparring, building up his muscle and getting great condition. It doesn't take long for them to be ousted by one of these rams, who then take over and then of course go through the same process. They spend 2 weeks of running around, losing condition, and eventually losing battles. And so you get a cross-section of the impala rams able to mate with one group of females. Bye boys, don't fight too much.